Again, I'm talking to journalist Steve Horn from DeSmog Blog, desmogblog.com, and on Twitter at Steve A. Horn. Well, so, we mentioned, some of the pollution in fracking. You actually had another report not that long ago up at DeSmog Blog about how Obama has actually really opened up the floodgates for fracking in the Gulf of Mexico. Tell us about it.
Sure. So I think some listeners may have at least heard of the fact that offshore fracking is happening. It was sort of secretly happening off the shore of California, and that was actually revealed first in a Truth Out article by Mike Ludwig, and then the AP picked up on it, and then it became a pretty big controversy. Well, what happened recently was there's a huge lease in the Gulf of Mexico in August. And so this kind of goes to show how much stuff still happens in August, even when Congress is on recess. And one of those things that happened was this huge lease. Originally, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which is a unit of the Department of Interior, they offered up 21.6 million acres for sale. Eventually, just over 434,000 acres were purchased by oil companies, and all the big ones were there: BP, Conoco, you name it, Shell. They all got parcels, and over 50% of these parcels were actually parcels that on areas that to get to the oil and gas, you need to do something called offshore fracking. And offshore fracking is for oil or gas that is over 5,000 feet under the ocean, so over basically a mile or more, super deep. It's called ultra deep water drilling, and it's located underneath, just like with onshore fracking, underneath deposits where you need to frack them. You need to prop open the land or the surface to get to the.
Yeah.
And so part of it, I think it's a little different than regular fracking. I think, at least in California's case, there's been controversies over different acids that need to be pumped under the ground. It's not necessarily the same chemicals as with onshore fracking, but at the same time, there's still lots of extreme chemicals being pumped under the ground to make it happen. And I think we still don't really know all the details of offshore fracking because it's still relatively small, and California is really the only case study, and it's only been a few wells. So we still have a lot to learn about it. But the point is that this lease really opened the floodgates for offshore fracking. We're looking at over 200,000 acres of land that could be used for fracking off the shore in the Gulf of Mexico. And this basically, it wasn't really discussed as offshore fracking. The reason why I learned about it was that an AP article kind of mentioned it in one sentence, where they said that some of these wells will be fracking. And then I kind of had to do some research, and I learned that kind of by deduction, looking at where the wells were and where the acres are, that a lot of these, because of how deep they are, that they will be. You'll have to do fracking when they're that deep. So that's what happened in the Gulf of Mexico, and this lease happened at the Superdome. There's actually an interesting article by Market Watch where one of the journalists actually went in, and it's kind of this kind of bizarre setting where she was a journalist. Everyone kind of. The bid almost to her seemed like it was like a carnival bid. It has sort of this festive atmosphere, and it was a big deal. And these leases happen twice a year. I think another one will happen in the spring, and it's part of something called the 5-year plan, which kind of sounds like something that come out of Stalin or something. But the 5-year plan is basically. The BOEM, or the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, plans how much oil and gas they're going to lease offshore every 5 years. So right now, I think we're in 2012 to 2017 5-year plan for offshore oil and gas. And so this is the latest lease, and it shows that so BP. One more thing to note is that obviously BP, responsible for the BP oil spill, they were considered the big winner. Besides offshore fracking, BP was considered the big winner of this lease. They won a lot of deposits that are oil and gas rich, and it kind of shows that BP is back in the game again in a big way for offshore oil and gas drilling.
Yeah, I heard that Market Watch report. It was actually really interesting. Like, it really did sound kind of like a party of all these like horrible oil people like getting together and like, we're getting, and like, so BP got a ton of areas that they're gonna do some more deep water drilling because they did such a good job with it in the Gulf of Mexico before, and of course no actual changes in regulations for that. But again, the whole idea of, all right, so fracking has been known to contaminate water. It's been known to cause earthquakes, and again, the process of it also it also releases methane into the air, which is a greenhouse gas, and so it's a really, really good idea to do that in the ocean. Let's move the plates of the ocean around. Let's inject chemicals into the ocean floor to move the plates of the earth around underwater. This is we're doomed, Steve. Isn't that what it is? Aren't we just doomed? Are we so? It's like these arrogant bastards are just like, yeah, let's shoot these chemicals in the ocean, and it's gonna be great, and we're gonna. I can't even comprehend what the hell these monsters are doing, and the fact that they're just that the Obama administration is letting them do it. It's mind blowing.
It really is, and you could say that this relates to the first stuff we talked about, and that look, climate change isn't part of these leases at all. It's not part of the discussion at all, and maybe I think that's the importance of that lawsuit, is that if they were required as an agency to consider climate change, maybe we'd be having a different discussion about this, and if it had to be part of the debate, then it could be legally challenged. But the way that it sits now, they're just able to give open season bids to these companies to do these crazy things like offshore fracking, which will have not only tremendous ecological impacts that we still don't even know. It's still so early. It's basically a big science experiment in the making. But at the same time, climate change was not discussed once in any, if you look at any press releases, you look at any of the materials, the government documents that were released for this bid, climate change isn't discussed a single time. And so I think that goes back to the importance of that lawsuit. It's kind of central to everything else that we're talking about, and how the administration is able to get away with this with no accountability for all these issues.